I'm Liza Allen, 32 years old. Last Christmas, I arrived at a historic mansion in Newport, Rhode Island. My arms full of gifts, my heart overflowing with hope for a warm family gathering. I pictured the laughter, the hugs, and the carols filling the room glowing with lights. But as soon as I reached the door, my mother blocked me with a cold stare. "You're not welcome this year." I froze, confused, until my sister stepped forward, smirking cruelly. "This is no place for losers." Her words cut through me like a blade, shattering every expectation in an instant. All the joy I carried turned into humiliation and bitterness. Forcing a smile, I nodded and walked away, hiding my tears in the freezing night. Sitting in my car, I picked up the phone and said calmly but firmly, "Cancel everything right now." 30 minutes later, my sister was in tears, begging me to let her back into my life. But by then, it was far too late. Have you ever walked into a moment expecting warmth, only to be met with betrayal instead? Share your story in the comments. I truly want to hear how you turned your pain into strength. My heels clicked on the polished wood floor as I pushed past the heavy oak door of the mansion. The chandelier light stung my eyes, but I wasn't here to admire the decor. My sister stood by the fireplace, wineglass in hand, laughing with a few cousins. My parents sat at the long dining table, surrounded by plates of untouched food. I could feel my pulse hammering in my ears. Why wasn't I invited? I demanded, my voice sharper than I meant. My sister turned her smile, fading into something colder. "Oh, you're here," she said, setting her glass down. "Didn't expect you to show up after Mom told you to stay away." Her tone was smug, like she'd won some game I didn't know we were playing. I glanced at my mom, expecting her to say something, anything. She just looked down at her plate, rearranging her napkin. My dad shifted in his chair, eyes fixed on the tablecloth. "What's going on?" I pressed, stepping closer. "I've been helping you for years. $50,000 for your fashion business, and this is how you thank me." My sister rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. "Helping," she scoffed. "You call those scraps helping? Your little handouts barely kept my boutique afloat. I needed real support, not your half-hearted checks." Her words hit like a slap. Handouts. I'd drained my savings to keep her dream alive, skipped vacations, worked overtime to cover her endless emergencies. I looked to my parents again, waiting for them to speak up. My mom's lips tightened, but she stayed silent. My dad cleared his throat, then muttered something about not wanting to stir things up. Their silence burned worse than my sister's words. "You think I'm some ATM for your failing business?" I said, my voice shaking. "I've given you everything I could." My sister smirked, leaning against the fireplace. "Everything, please. If you really cared, you'd have invested more. You're just jealous because I'm building something real while you're stuck crunching numbers all day." That was it. The room felt like it was closing in the air, thick with her arrogance. I thought of all the late nights I'd spent balancing her books, the checks I'd written, without a second thought. She didn't just take my money. She took my trust and threw it back in my face. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady, despite the anger boiling inside. "You know what I said?" Locking eyes with her. "I'm done." I dialed my financial advisor, my voice calm but firm. "Hey, it's me. That $50,000 investment for my sister's boutique. Cancel everything right now." My sister's smirk vanished. "What are you doing?" she snapped, stepping toward me. I held up a hand, stopping her. "You heard me?" I said to the advisor. "Pull every cent. I'm not funding this anymore." The call ended and the room went quiet. My sister's face paled, her eyes wide with something like panic. "You can't do that," she stammered. "You'll ruin me." I met her gaze unflinching. "You did that yourself," I said. My parents exchanged a glance, but said nothing. My mom's hands twisted in her lap. My dad's jaw clenched, but they didn't move. Their silence was louder than any argument. I turned to leave my chest tight, but my steps steady. "You'll regret this," my sister called after me, her voice sharp but unsteady. I didn't look back. I'd given her too much for too long, and she'd thrown it away with one cruel sentence. As I reached the door, I heard her husband murmur something to her, but I didn't catch it. I didn't need to. I'd made my choice, and there was no going back. The cold night air hit me as I stepped outside. I sat in my car outside the mansion, the engine humming as I gripped the steering wheel. My phone buzzed, lighting up with a notification from my sister's fashion supplier. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew what I'd done. My call to cancel her $50,000 investment would hit her hard and fast. Barely 30 minutes had passed since I hung up, but I could already imagine the chaos unfolding. My sister's smug face from earlier flashed in my mind, her voice echoing with that biting arrogance. I pushed it away, focusing on the road ahead, but my phone buzzed again. This time it was a Facebook notification. Curious, I opened the app. My sister had posted publicly, her words glaring on the screen. Some people pretend to be family, but won't lift a finger to help. Pathetic. The post was tagged to me. My name bolded for everyone to see. Comments were already piling up. Her friends, our cousins, even strangers piling on, calling me selfish, stingy, a failure. My chest tightened, a fresh wave of hurt washing over me. She didn't just betray me in private. She was dragging my name through the mud for the world to see. I scrolled through the comments, each one a new stab. What kind of sister does that one read? No wonder she's alone. Another sneered. I locked my phone, my hands shaking. How dare she? After everything I'd sacrificed, years of writing checks, covering her debts, believing her promises, she painted me as the villain. The hurt burned hotter than the anger from the mansion, fueling something colder, more resolute. I wasn't just done, I was finished with her for good. Then my phone rang. Her number flashed on the screen. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "What do you want?" I said, my voice flat. "Please." My sister's voice cracked frantic. "You have to fix this. The supplier just emailed. They're pulling the contract for my spring collection. It's worth millions. I'm done without it." Her words tumbled out, desperate, nothing like the confidence she'd thrown at me earlier. "You can't let this happen. Give me a seat at your table again. Please, I need that money back." Her plea was a punch to the gut. A seat at my table. She meant my bank account, my trust, the support she'd mocked just minutes ago. I could hear her pacing, her breath hitching like she was on the verge of tears, but her Facebook post still glowed in my mind, those cruel words etched into my memory. "You crossed a line," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "You took my money, insulted me, and now you're trashing me online. You think I owe you anything? I didn't mean it," she cried. I was upset. "Okay, I'll delete the post. Just call your advisor back. Reinstate the funds. I'm begging you." Her voice broke, but it didn't move me. I'd heard her excuses before. Every time she missed a payment, every time she borrowed more than she could repay. This wasn't remorse. It was panic. "No," I said, my tone final. "You made your choice. You don't get to rewrite it now." I hung up before she could respond, her pleas cut off by the silence of the call ending. My phone buzzed again. Another notification. Probably more comments on her post, but I turned it off. I didn't need to see it. Her words, her desperation, none of it changed what she'd done. She'd humiliated me, not just to our family, but to everyone we knew. And for what? To save face while her business crumbled. I leaned back in my seat, the weight of my decision settling in. Cutting her off wasn't just about the money. It was about cutting out the lies, the manipulation, the years of being used. My parents' silence back at the mansion stung, but my sister's public attack was a betrayal I couldn't forgive. I'd given her everything, and she'd thrown it back in my face. Now she'd face the consequences alone. A few days after Christmas, I was nursing a coffee at my kitchen table when my phone pinged with a text. It was from her husband, a number I hadn't saved but recognized from years of family group chats. "We need to talk," the message read. "It's about your sister's spending." My stomach nodded. I'd been trying to shake off the sting of her public attack online, but this felt different, urgent, almost heavy. I typed back, "What do you mean?" His reply came fast. "She's been lying to you. Meet me at the diner on Temp Street." Noon. I arrived at the diner, a small place with chipped red booths and the faint smell of fried eggs. Her husband was already there, sitting in a corner, his face-rawn eyes darting like he was afraid of being seen. "Thanks for coming," he said, his voice low. "I can't keep quiet anymore. Your sister's been using your money for things you didn't sign off on." I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. "What things?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He slid his phone across the table, showing a screenshot of a bank statement. Designer handbags, 5-star hotels, a trip to Paris last spring. He said, "Your $50,000 didn't go to her boutique. It went to her lifestyle." I stared at the numbers. Thousands spent on luxury brands, travel agencies, high-end restaurants. My money, the savings I'd poured into her dream, had funded her Instagram perfect vacations. My hands clenched into fists, a slow burn spreading through me. "Why are you telling me this now?" I demanded. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Because I'm done covering for her. She's out of control, and I'm worried about our kids." His voice cracked, and for the first time I saw guilt in his eyes. I nodded, too angry to trust my words. I needed proof, something solid, to confront the betrayal I felt. "I'll handle it," I said, standing to leave. That afternoon, I booked an appointment with Martin Gray, a lawyer I'd worked with on a contract dispute years ago. His office was a small, tidy space in downtown Newport walls, lined with law books and a single photo of his kids. "Good to see you," Liza Martin said, shaking my hand. "What's going on?" I explained everything. My sister's boutique, the 50,000 I'd invested her husband's text, the screenshots. "I need to know the truth," I said, my voice steady but tight. Martin nodded, pulling out his laptop. "Let's dig into it." He contacted my financial advisor and requested records of every transaction tied to my sister's business account. Within hours, he had a stack of documents, invoices, bank transfers, credit card statements. I sat across from him, my heart sinking as he walked me through the evidence: a $3,000 handbag from Saks, a $10,000 deposit for a Paris hotel, a $5,000 payment to a travel agency for a Caribbean cruise. None of it had gone to fabric suppliers' employee wages or store rent. "This is fraud," Martin said, his tone matter of fact, but serious. "Your sister misrepresented how she'd use your investment. You could sue for restitution." I shook my head, the weight of her betrayal settling in. I didn't want a lawsuit. I wanted answers, closure, anything to make sense of why she'd lied. How could she do this? I whispered more to myself than to him. Martin leaned back, his expression softening. "Some people take trust for granted. They think it's a blank check." I left his office with copies of the documents, my mind racing. My sister hadn't just taken my money. She'd built a facade with it, parading her success while I worked overtime to keep her afloat. The trips, the designer bags, the social media posts I'd liked, without question, they were all lies. I thought of her smug face at the mansion, her cruel words online, her desperate pleas when her supplier bailed. She'd played me for years, and I'd let her. As I drove home, the documents heavy in my bag, a new clarity took hold. The first week of January brought a knock at my door, sharp and unexpected. I opened it to find my parents standing on my porch in the chilly Rhode Island suburbs, their faces tight with purpose. My mom clutched her purse, her eyes avoiding mine, while my dad shifted his weight, his usual calm replaced by unease. "We need to talk," my dad said, his voice low but firm. I hesitated, then stepped aside to let them in my gut, telling me this wasn't a friendly visit. They sat stiffly on my living room couch, the same one I'd bought with my own money, after years of supporting my sister. "Your sister's in trouble?" My mom started, her hands twisting together. "Her boutique is falling apart because you pulled your funding. You need to help her." Her words were a punch, direct and unapologetic. I stared, disbelief rising like a tide. "Help her," I said, my voice sharp. "After she lied to me, used my money for designer bags and vacations." My dad raised a hand, his tone conciliatory. "She made mistakes, sure, but she's family. You can't just abandon her." His words echoed their silence at the mansion when they'd let her call me a loser without a word. I leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, trying to keep my anger in check. "You didn't say a word when she humiliated me," I said. "You stood by while she trashed me online. And now you're here asking me to bail her out again." My mom's face hardened, her voice rising. "You're being selfish, Liza. Your sister needs you. She's struggling, and you're sitting here fine with your fancy job and your perfect life. Perfect life." I almost laughed. My job as an accountant was steady, but it wasn't glamorous. I'd sacrificed vacation savings time all to prop up my sister's failing dreams. Selfish, I shot back. I gave her $50,000. She spent it on herself, not her business. I'm done being her bank. My dad sighed, rubbing his temples. Family sticks together, he said, his voice softer but insistent. You could give her another chance. Reinstate the funds just enough to get her back on her feet. I shook my head, the weight of their bias pressing down. They hadn't come to hear my side. They'd come to defend her, to guilt me into opening my wallet again. You always take her side, I said, my voice trembling. Even after she lied, after she betrayed me. Why is it always me who has to fix things? Before they could answer, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my friend Gail Reed, who'd been my rock through this mess. Heard your parents are there, need backup. I typed back a quick yes, and within minutes Gail was at my door, her presence a steady anchor. She stepped inside, her sharp eyes taking in my parents' tense postures. What's going on? Gail asked, her tone calm but protective. I explained, my words spilling out. They want me to fund my sister again after everything she's done. Gail's jaw tightened, but she stayed composed. You've given enough, she said, looking straight at my parents. Liza's not the problem here. Your other daughter lied and used her. Why are you blaming the one who's been hurt? Her words were blunt, cutting through the tension like a knife. My mom bristled, her voice sharp. You don't understand family, Gail. This is between us. Gail didn't flinch. I understand loyalty, she said, and Liza deserves better than this. Her support steadied me, grounding my resolve. I turned to my parents, my voice firm. I'm done, I said. Not just with her, but with all of this. I won't be guilted into fixing her messes anymore. If you can't see that, we're through. My dad's face fell, his mouth opening to protest, but my mom grabbed his arm, silencing him. They stood their expressions, a mix of frustration and disbelief, and walked out without another word. The door clicked shut, and I felt a strange relief, like a weight had lifted. Gail put a hand on my shoulder, her voice soft. You did the right thing, she said. I nodded, the finality of my words sinking in. I'd cut the cord, not just with my sister, but with the family that chose her over me. A week after my parents' visit, my phone lit up with another text from her husband. I'm leaving her, it read, taking the kids to my mom's place in Providence. Can we talk? My heart sank. Not for my sister, but for their kids. 2 boys and a girl, barely old enough to understand the mess their parents had made. I typed back, agreeing to meet him at a coffee shop in Warwick, a short drive from my place. I wasn't sure what he wanted, but his earlier honesty about my sister's spending had earned him a sliver of my trust. At the coffee shop, he sat across from me, his eyes, hollow shoulders slumped under the weight of his decision. I can't stay with her anymore, he said, stirring his coffee without drinking it. The lies, the money. She's run the boutique into the ground, and now she's taking it out on the kids. His voice was steady but raw, like he'd been holding this in for too long. I nodded, my jaw tight. What's your plan? I asked. I'm moving the kids to my mother's house, he said. It's a small place, but it's safe. I need to find a rental nearby, something I can afford on my bank salary. I don't want them growing up in that chaos. I thought of my sister, her lavish spending, her public attacks on me. She'd built a house of cards, and now it was collapsing around her family. I'll help you, I said, my voice firm. But this is for you and the kids, not her. She's out of my life. He looked at me, relief flickering in his eyes. I get it, he said. I don't want her involved either. She's burned too many bridges. I pulled out my laptop and started searching for rentals in Providence, filtering for places close to his mother's house. Within an hour, we'd found a modest 2-bedroom apartment, affordable but clean. I offered to cover the first month's rent and deposit a small gesture to keep those kids stable. You don't have to do this, he said, his voice thick with gratitude. I'm not doing it for you, I replied, meeting his gaze. I'm doing it for them. The kids didn't deserve to pay for their mother's mistakes. He nodded understanding and promised to pay me back when he could. I didn't care about the money. It was nothing compared to what I'd lost to my sister. Helping him felt like drawing a line away to protect what mattered without letting her back in. Meanwhile, word reached me through a mutual friend that my sister was spiraling. Without my funding, her boutique couldn't cover its debts. Suppliers had cut her off, and her employees were quitting unpaid. She'd tried borrowing from friends, but her reputation, tarnished by her own social media rants, made them wary. Her credit cards were maxed out, her savings drained on luxuries she couldn't sustain. I pictured her in her fancy house, surrounded by designer bags. She couldn't sell her phone silent as her so-called allies turned away. I felt a pang of pity, but it passed quickly. She'd chosen this path, lying to me, betraying my trust, attacking me publicly. Now she was facing the fallout alone. I'd spent years cleaning up her messes, but no more. My focus was on helping her husband get his kids settled, not on bailing her out. I wired the payment for the apartment deposit, confirming with the landlord over a quick call. "It's done," I told him as we left the coffee shop. "You're set for the month." He shook my hand, his grip firm but weary. "Thank you," he said. "The kids will be okay now." I nodded, hoping he was right. As I drove back to my place, I thought about the family I'd once had, parents who took her side, a sister who used me, kids caught in the middle. I'd cut them out, but helping those kids felt like a small redemption, a way to hold on to my own values without giving in to her chaos. I turned onto my street, the weight of my choice settling in. Late January brought a quiet evening broken by my phone ringing. My sister's number flashed on the screen, and I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the decline button. Weeks had passed since I'd cut her off, and the silence had been a relief. But curiosity won out, and I answered. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice cold. "I'm sorry," she said, her tone rushed, almost rehearsed. "I messed up, okay? I shouldn't have said those things online. But you didn't have to destroy my business." Her words carried a familiar edge, blaming me even as she apologized. I gripped the phone tighter, my patience thinning. "You destroyed it yourself," I said. "You lied about my money, spent it on luxuries, and then trashed me publicly. Don't put this on me." She sighed, dramatic and forced. "I was stressed, Liza. You don't know what it's like to run a boutique. I needed those trips to network to keep up appearances. You could have helped more instead of pulling the plug." I almost laughed at her nerve. Even now, she couldn't own her mistakes. "You're not sorry," I said. "You're just scared because it's all falling apart." She went quiet, and I hung up her half-hearted plea, fading into nothing. The next day, my parents called, their voices heavy with urgency. "We need to fix this family." My dad said, his tone softer than at my house. "Your sister's in a bad place. She's lost everything." I sat on my couch, staring out the window at the bare trees lining my street. She lost it because she lied. I said, "I'm not going back." My mom jumped in, her voice, pleading, "She's your sister. You can't turn your back on blood. Let's sit down, talk it out." Their words stung, stirring memories of their silence when I needed them. "You didn't stand up for me," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "Not at the mansion, not when she attacked me online, not when you came to my house. I'm done trying to fix what you won't." My dad started to protest, but I cut him off. "I want to live my life, not clean up hers. If you can't respect that, we're done too." The line went silent, and they hung up their attempt at peace crumbling. I leaned back, a strange calm settling over me. I'd spent years tying my worth to their approval, but no more. I wanted a life free of their expectations, their bias, their endless demands to save my sister. Word spread quickly about her downfall. A friend texted me a news article. Her boutique had shuttered the lease terminated for unpaid rent. She'd sold her house in Newport, the one she'd flaunted as a symbol of success to cover debts. Now she was living in a small apartment, scraping by on social assistance, her designer wardrobe pawned off for pennies. I pictured her alone, surrounded by the remnants of a life she'd built on lies, and felt no satisfaction, only a quiet resolve to keep my distance. Her collapse was complete. Suppliers wouldn't touch her. Her former friends had vanished, and her husband had taken their kids to start over. My parents' call stopped their energy for reconciliation fading as her reality sank in. I'd heard she'd tried starting a new venture, some online shop, but it failed within weeks. Her reputation too damaged to recover. She was out of options, out of excuses, and out of my life. I thought about the years I'd spent propping her up, believing her promises, trusting her dreams. Each betrayal, her spending her words, her refusal to change had pushed me to this point. I wasn't the villain she'd painted me as, nor the savior my parents wanted. I was just me, choosing myself for once. As I set my phone down, the weight of my freedom felt real. By spring, the air in Rhode Island felt lighter, and so did I. For the first time in years, I woke up without the weight of my sister's demands or my parents' expectations pressing down on me. My days settled into a rhythm that was mine alone. Mornings at my accounting firm, crunching numbers with a clarity I hadn't felt in ages, and evenings with friends who didn't ask me to fix their lives. Gail and I started a weekly dinner tradition at a seaside cafe in Newport, laughing over plates of clam chowder and stories that didn't revolve around family drama. I even took up painting again, a hobby I'd abandoned when my sister's crisis took over. My small house in the suburbs, once a place I crashed between her emergencies, became a sanctuary filled with my own choices, books I wanted to read, colors I chose for the walls. I heard about my sister through whispers from old acquaintances. She was still in that cramped apartment, scraping by on social assistance, her once glamorous life reduced to thrift store clothes and a part-time job at a local diner. She hadn't changed. Not really. A mutual friend mentioned she'd been venting to anyone who'd listen, blaming me, her husband, even the economy, for her downfall. "Liza ruined me," she'd say, her voice sharp with resentment, as if her lies and choices hadn't burned every bridge she had. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a quiet distance. Her life was her own now, and I no longer carried its weight. My parents stopped reaching out their silence, a confirmation of the line I'd drawn. I didn't hate them, but I couldn't keep chasing their approval. They'd chosen my sister's side too many times, and I'd spent too long trying to prove I was enough. Letting go of that need was like stepping into sunlight after years in the shade. I didn't need their validation to know my worth, my work, my friends, the life I was building. They were proof enough. I thought about her husband and their kids sometimes. He'd sent me a thank you note after settling into the apartment I'd helped him rent, promising to keep the kids safe and stable. I didn't ask about my sister, and he didn't mention her. It was better that way. The kids deserved a chance to grow up without her chaos, and I trusted he'd make that happen. I'd done my part, not out of obligation, but because it was right. Looking back, the lesson was clear, carved into every choice I'd made. I'd spent years pouring my heart and money into my sister, believing kindness would fix her, that family meant carrying her burdens. But kindness isn't a debt others can claim, it's a gift, and it should never be weaponized. She'd taken my generosity, twisted it, and used it to fuel her own ego, leaving me to pick up the pieces. I'd learned that boundaries aren't selfish, they're survival. In a place like America, where independence is a cornerstone, I'd finally embraced it. Standing on my own wasn't lonely, it was liberating. I started volunteering at a community center, helping women navigate financial planning. It wasn't about saving anyone, but about giving them tools to save themselves. Every time I sat with someone explaining budgets or savings plans, I saw a piece of myself, the part that had once trusted too much, given too much, and learned the hard way to prioritize my own stability. I wasn't perfect, but I was free, and that was enough. My sister's story wasn't mine to write anymore. She'd made her choices, and I'd made mine. While she pointed fingers, I built a life that didn't revolve around her mistakes. The mansion, the money, the family ties, they were part of a chapter I'd closed. As I walked along the cliffs of Newport one evening, the ocean stretching wide before me, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. My life wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about living for me on my terms with no apologies.